Carl and Brendan here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short. And it's battle reaction time, Brendan's choice, as we touch upon a band called Haunted by Silhouettes. Name vaguely rings a bell, but truth be told, can't say I'm aware of anything they've done. Brendan, please fill us in.
It's quite a recent one. It's a melodic death metal. I'm going back to an old favorite.
Okay, yeah.
Or a new favorite. And this is quite a recent release. So Norwegian band. Didn't know anything about them before this. It's another one that came our way. I think like the label sort of shared the review and all that sort of stuff with the comment, which I completely meant, which was, it's probably the best melodic death metal release I'd heard in years. I absolutely loved it. I think it's fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it all the way through. Obviously, like any good Scandinavian melodic death metal, there are tracks on it. Like, for example, they have Bjorn from Soilwork appear on a track. If you're going to do melodic death, you've got to get Bjorn on it. He seems to appear everywhere these days. It's melodic death, but I think that the reason I liked it is because if you listen to the EP as a whole, it kind of leans more towards, I don't know, it's not like old school or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's modern melodic death with little scar symmetry touches in there. They're not afraid of a little bit of synth, that sort of stuff. And they're also they have like variety, and that's what I liked about it. And actually, this song is probably one of the more creative of the ones on there. And while I love every song on it, I think it's phenomenal. This release, this particular song, No Man Isle, which is also the name of the EP, is the song that I go back to the most. So
you gave it 10 out of 10 in a review, so that affect that's heavy. There's heavy expectation, really.
Yeah, I messed up with this one, though I really did, because I'm not sure if you've ever done it when you're doing the reviews, but I essentially I was trying to get ahead, so I took this was back in March.
Yeah,
and this was due out in May, so I was like, I'm just gonna grab that EP because I had a bit half hour. I was like, I'm gonna listen to this, write it up, and see what I think. And then I've got one out there, and then I fucking loved it, 10 out of 10. But then I had to wait till May for it to fucking come out to just be able to tell people about it and play it, and even for the review to go up. I was like,
you got to do that thing where you say to someone, oh yeah, man, this fucking thing, it's amazing, it's awesome, and all that. And they're like, oh, cool. And then you'd be like, yeah, but it doesn't come out for another 2 weeks. That kind of thing.
And that would have been all right. But in this instance, it doesn't come out for another 2 months. So, but yeah, look, I really, really like it. Look, it's melodic death at the end of the day. And I think you will see that throughout. You'll recognize it, but I hope you'll also recognize the modern kind of creative touches that they've added.
Yeah, because this is an interesting one. There's a little bit of a block. It might always seem when we do battle reactions in a row, that we're often on the same page, but there's some area we don't quite see eye to eye on, and it's to do with mellow death. And what for example, you mentioned scar symmetry, you've mentioned other ones like that in the past. I can't remember any of their names now, and I've liked them, but not necessarily love them in quite the same ways. Basically, mellow death is your Grimgot, your Grimgot. So for how I feel about Grimgot's mellow death for you is where it's I don't think you've necessarily lost any battles where you've done mellow death, because it's very hard for me to be like, oh yeah, that banging track isn't, but sometimes I'm not always like, he loves this band, why do you love them? That kind of thing. So it'll be interesting on that front.
Yeah, no, I get that. I don't know if I love this band yet. That's the thing. I only know this one EP. I love this EP, so I'm hoping that will lead to a love of the band.
Yeah, it's not a bad start though, to love the EP.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this in 3, 2, 1, go. Watery.
On an island.
You live in order to return one day to
no one expected.
Shore, to that core. I've done
hear those folksy instruments.
Boom.
So I think it's fair to say, yeah, I mean, a lot of what you said at the start does tie in quite nicely to this. Yeah, it does, you know, a lot of recognizable mellow death. Traditionally, if you want to call it that, the stuff that kind of makes you go, okay, yeah, that's it. Some of the verse into the chorus, the guitar soloing, stuff like that. It's all very recognizable. I almost feel like it's an attempt to do symphonic power metal, but without actually doing symphonic power metal. At all, like in that sense. I realize that sounds like nonsense. What I mean is, obviously, there's layers in that. There's obviously this detail in that perhaps isn't what you normally expect. One of the things is obviously quite predominant is the sense of almost seafaring or, you know, beachy kind of like watery stone, like whether it be the ringing bell, where it be just this sort of effects, and the folky style instruments. Like there's no other way I can think to describe that stuff other than just saying folksy, because that's what it kind of puts you in mind. Even though it's more of a, I don't get a people in the woods dancing around a tree thing. I get more of a, you know, woolen jumpers sitting at a beach with a sea dried skin kind of feel more than anything else. And I like that. It's imaginative. It creates something a little bit different. It creates an idea of a story almost in my head, where it's like, okay, right, if it's a themed EP, and that's kind of what we're going for. I quite like the sound of that. Aside from that aspect, obviously, as the mellow death part of it, it's very, very solid. It's very, very good. The chorus is really good. I really think the guitar solo at the end is really, really strong too. The clean vocals, the mix of that, the heavier ones, it all works. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It all works so nicely together. That I can't really think of anything to complain about. I can't like pick at something and go, oh yeah, well, I didn't like that aspect and things, or I was distracted or bored, I wasn't feeling it, and that sort of thing, because it kept my attention for over 5 minutes, which is never a bad thing in that thing. I think it's a developing track. It's one of those where you listen to it at the start, and at the start it's more subtle than what it will become, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist later on. I think with Mellow Death, it's so hard to stand out from the pack.
That's one of the things that I really loved about it the most, because obviously being, you know, more like probably listening to Mellow Death more regularly, you know, like daily pretty much, you know, you know, I'm well aware of like everything that Mellow Death is, and I feel like these guys are like, they're kind of like 70%, like you said, all the main core of Mellow Death is still there.
Yeah,
I like the fact that they're just trying to vary it a little bit. They're just trying to
a bit
at that, without going fucking crazy or anything like that. But you know, I very much enjoy the harsh vocals. I think he has, because they let the music is in this one is sometimes more subtle. It leaves him quite exposed, so he has to have good vocals. Like he has to be able to growl well, and you know what I mean. He's not being covered up by like nothing in long portions of this track. The drums are very, very good, but then like that's like, you know, drummers these days, man.
Yeah.
When you listen to a band and go, oh, they're really good, but the drummers shit. You know what I mean?
We might be in short supply, but the ones who are out there are bloody good.
You know, so but I think maybe like in, not necessarily because of a story, but in the context of the album, the song probably also becomes a bit more special, like, sorry, the EP, because it is the ending song on the EP. So that kind of tailing out at the end makes like a little bit more sense as you kind of closing it off. You know what I mean? It's not dragging it out before the next song comes in. It's the end of the EP. And actually, like when you listen to the EP, there are songs on it that are more traditional Mellow Death, but they still have moments. That's the thing I loved about it. Even the ones that are more ripping, kind of 100 miles an hour sort of tracks, you know, there'll be a little synth line, there'll be a little something, and you just go, oh, good on you, man. Like, for not, you know, a Norwegian band, Scandinavian band, you could have just literally come out and just done the Mellow Death thing, and you probably still would have found fans within the Mellow Death arena. So I like the fact that they, without going to town on it, like, and becoming a completely different genre, that they've, you know, just try and move it forward a little bit. I love that about it.
Yeah, I think that's super important as well, is that it is, you've got that familiarity that that places it. So if you're kind of searching out this band because you're a big fan of Mellow Death, and then you come across it, you're like, okay, cool, it's got all those elements, and it's not so wildly different that it's like, no, why is this band calling them Mellow Death when they're doing this and they do that and doing this and that kind of thing? Instead, it comes across grander, and that's what something Mellow Death for me doesn't always do. Is it doesn't have a grandiosity. It doesn't sound lavish. It doesn't sound like you put time into going, well, okay, what about this instrument? Will this work as well? And stuff like that. Of course, there are Mellow Death bands that do that, of course. But in regards to this one, it's like, okay, there seems to have been a lot of thought about, well, what about if we added to this idea? And what if we added this ringing bell? And does that fit and does that work? We're trying to work around that. Whereas I'd imagine maybe it came to life originally as, like I said, okay, we've got this nice verse, this nice chorus, this heavy bit here, guitar solo, but we want to stretch the limits of our imagination. So let's see what else we
like you said,
can layer in.
Might be touching on like, I mean, I don't know enough about the history of the band, but obviously I know they're Norwegian. So, you know, and we obviously know, like, you know, historically Melodeath comes from Scandinavia, but also
Mhm.
does the sort of seafaring Viking sort of style of music. So, in my head, I'm like, maybe they're adding, elements of what they are, like their coastal sort of stuff, and
Yeah.
we're doing Melodeath, but we're also going to add our own personal kind of identities into this as well, which I like as well in music, not just in this, but in any music, But like it's one of those things. Like I a little bit of me was like, I remember when I first listened to the EP, I was like, it's quite varied. That's the thing. It's varied. Like the very first song on it is only like a 90-second long, kind of power metal-y guitar intro, and I
Right.
was like, oh, I thought this was Melodeath. And then the next
Right.
song's like, then there's a couple of like, sort of like, oh yeah, these are Melodeath tracks, but with cool moments. And then it's like, oh, and we'll bring the dude from Soilwork in just to make sure that everyone realizes we're Melodeath. And then just as we get to the end, we go, we'll just chuck this one on them, just to see how they take that.
Yeah, like it's almost like okay, well, like I'm not saying this is what they are thinking at all. Of course I'm not, but it's almost like when you describe it like that, it's like, well, we're going to do this to please and set ourselves, but this last track is what we kind of want to be.
Yeah, or like just so that
we'll drop it in. Yeah,
we're not going to be one thing. Like we want to. We're going to give you your comfort blanket, but just be aware that when the album comes out or when our next release, like there's going to be variety, and it's not all going to be straight up Melodeath. But again, I'm all right with that. You know what I mean? Like there's enough crossover with Scandinavian music to have a little bit of folk, a little bit of power, a little bit of melodic death metal, kind of all working together quite harmoniously. Anyway, as long as it's done well.
Yeah, because when you think from an outside perspective, a person that's never been there, and you think of Norway, you're like, well, there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of sea, and there's a lot of cold. That makes that sense. Yeah,
that's it. Cold, trees,
nothing else.
No people.
Yeah, it's a win. It's a win because it's too good of a track to not. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'd be very interested to sort of see what comes from Haunted by Silhouettes as they go on and see if they really kind of develop that or if they scale it back.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah. What do you think, folks? You know what to do. Drop it in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?